I guess first, thanks for everyone for tuning in here. This will, as usual, be put onto YouTube after on the dYdX Foundation YouTube and pushed out through Twitter. So for anyone who's listening in after, obviously this isn't live, but essentially we've got Arr00 here, who's the creator of dYdX.vote. Arr00 is also a main contributor to Compound, and I'm sure we can touch on that a little bit in time. And we've obviously got Carl, who's a member of the dYdX grants team, who will kind of talk through everything recent of dYdX grants and maybe touch on the November 22 monthly update. So I guess, Carl, do you want to kick us off and provide an update on everything grants?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, as always, for hosting. So we published our monthly update for November earlier this week, and I encourage anyone who's interested in keeping up with the program and what we've been doing to give that a read. It's on our website, dYdXgrants.com, on the blog page, but I'll run through some quick highlights now as kind of that, part of that is as it goes over some of our kind of stats and everything. So in the past month of November, we have 7 grants approved for a total of $84,500 in funding, and that now brings our total to 86 grants with $2.7 million in funding that's been distributed across both Grants V1 and Grants V1.5. So it's, we're super excited about our progress, and we're still seeing lots of great applicants and lots of great grantees. It was definitely a bit of a slower month in terms of approvals, but we were a bit more conservative than usual, just given the events and everything, and we wanted to make sure that we were careful with our distributions and approvals, but still super optimistic for the program. And overall, we're still actively looking towards funding international growth grants, given the substantial budget that we have allocated towards that. So just as a reminder, those grants are typically projects that help promote brand awareness, help build user growth, and kind of help engage the community through different local or kind of international events and initiatives. So if you have any sort of idea of project that falls within that category, absolutely submit an application before giving me a shout or anything. We had some completed grants this past month as well, and we're kind of just moving along really well with the other ones. Super excited about updates from the merch team, the academy team, and lots of other grantees. And we also released some new RFPs, so take a look at our initiatives page for ideas on possible grants. And as always, applications are open. It could be anything, whatever you want to do, as long as it kind of helps build, promote, and improve or engage the dYdX community, then we're all ears. And we've got some exciting grants already coming up in a round that'll probably be released next week or so. So keep an eye out for updates there. That's it for me. Won't hold up any longer.
Thanks, Carl. And with the merch store and the academy, is there kind of a public ETA release date for those two, or is that still kind of in the works?
Yeah, so merch we're very close. We are kind of dotting I's and crossing T's on some legal stuff and kind of final adjustments to the website, where we're basically there. It's really just tiny little details that we have to make sure everything is clean and in order before going fully public. But I would expect definitely before the end of the year. I don't know if I want to promise anything too early, but I think it's probably next week or the week after. Yeah. For the academy, it should be early on in the new year. I'm expecting sometime in January, basically early mid-January, assuming all goes well. The team is working really hard on website development, design. Content is being produced now and everything, but moving along really well. So I'd say a month and a half away.
Awesome. Yeah, everyone seems to be really excited about those two. So looking forward to those coming live and getting released. Cool. Arr00, I guess just a few basic questions and early ones for you before we can dig into the weeds of dYdX.vote. But it'd be great for you just to hear more about yourself, your background, what you're currently doing, and what you're kind of interested in the space currently.
Yeah, sure. So I got into the DeFi universe with Compound back in late 2019, and I was one of the contributors and voters in the Compound protocol for quite a while. I helped contribute to the creation of Compound Governor Bravo, and through that I was always looking at basically the feature of this gasless voting, which is really not utilized. So I made comp.vote, which was the start of the .vote websites, which provide gasless voting. And then after that, I did uni.vote and then dYdX.vote. But I, enjoy helping out within the DeFi space, especially governance. Right now, I'm, doing some more projects behind the scenes and governance related stuff.
That's awesome. So you're pretty early in the kind of governance side of things. I guess, what attracted you to governance initially? Have you obviously been involved in DAOs for a number of years now, and you were early in that sense? But yeah, what initially attracted you to the governance space, and what made you kind of build those projects?
I think it was about like enabling the masses of the DAOs to actually be able to do things increasing involvement by reducing the friction of voting, and it was really incredible to see that you could have people from all around the world in a decentralized organization working towards a common goal, and I wanted to help make that process as frictionless as possible.
Yeah, that's super interesting, as I think everyone in the dYdX ecosystem and more broadly, kind of governance is definitely a difficult task to navigate. And I think Clifton here, who's part of the governance team at dYdX, can echo that. And something that I know dYdX.vote has been a great addition for us. I guess it would be great for you to just talk about the website a little bit. Like, when did it go live again? Because I know it was live for Grants V1. And who can actually use the website? I know that might sound very basic, but who can actually use that dYdX.vote website?
So dYdX.vote was in beta for a couple of months. I don't know the exact dates, but for the most recent proposal was the first time where we announced it to the public and is fully opened up to all eligible users, which is defined as someone who has at least one dYdX, either for delegation, one dYdX in their wallet, or for voting, one dYdX delegated to them. And that's just to avoid spam and zero weight votes, which I have gotten quite a bit of in the past when I wasn't enforcing these lower limits. But yeah, anyone with one dYdX can use the protocol for voting or delegation whenever they want to.
Awesome. And curious, just prior to obviously launching dYdX.vote, were you in the dYdX ecosystem? Are you a trader yourself, or are you very much kind of like DeFi DAO contributor space, and that's your kind of niche in that realm?
Well, not quite dYdX trader, as I'm a American citizen and don't think we're legally allowed to use dYdX. But I do use many DeFi protocols. That's the ones I'm allowed to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. And again, another question that's might seem quite basic to you, but I think it's important to touch on is, what are the advantages of using dYdX.vote instead of the sort of traditional voting on Ethereum?
So essentially, the value of dYdX, and the only reason to use dYdX in my dYdX.vote, in my eyes, is because it's free. Right now, I guess it is a little bit cheaper to vote nowadays on chain than it was back when we started all these .vote websites. But throughout all of these wavering gas prices, if gas goes back to 150 gwei, dYdX will always be free, and the DAOs will be footing the bill for people to be involved and always cast their vote, regardless of how little they care on their own. If they feel like they don't make a difference, obviously we want everyone to be voting. So that's what dYdX.vote is here for.
Awesome. And I know on the website you've got kind of another functionality to it, as well as the delegate tab. I wonder if you could just touch on that, what that would be used for someone who holds dYdX, and yeah, the typical use case there.
Yeah, so often when people are involved in DAOs, they're not fully committed to the actual DAO, right? They'll hold the token, they'll be a big fan of the project, but they're not going to be following along for every single proposal, not going to be following along behind the scenes, right? And this is somewhat analogous to, say, politicians and the real world and whatever real governance is. You'll delegate your votes to someone who is involved in the dYdX ecosystem, who you trust and have similar alignment to within the dYdX ecosystem, and then your votes will be added to their voting weight, and they'll basically be voting on your behalf. So the delegate tab allows you to gaslessly again, delegate your votes to a different dYdX voter who might be a little bit more involved and up to date than you. So we have a list of the people by voting weight in the voting tab, and then you can scroll through them. Whoever has identified by the tally backend will be labeled, and you can click on their name, and it will bring you to their Etherscan URL, or you can just type in whatever address you'd like to delegate to.
Brilliant. That's really helpful. And users don't need any kind of experience for voting or to delegate their tokens today. It's pretty self-explanatory. You just head to the website, connect their wallet, and vote by signature or delegate by signature, and pretty much it's quite streamlined like that.
Exactly.
Bro, cool. And
do you mind if I hop in, James, and just ask, now that we've kind of gone over, okay, so there's gasless voting, there's gasless delegation, how does it work? Arr00, how are you able to enable this for us? What have you built that actually creates this? And why is this possible, right? if you can explain in the simplest way possible for all of us to understand, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So within, I think, almost every governance framework, which is this type of voting system, there's within the smart contracts, you have a function which is delegate by sig or vote by sig. So delegate by sig will actually be on the dYdX token contract, right? But these by sig functions can be called by anyone, and you pass to it a signature, right, of this data. And then it will, using the EIP 712 signature protocol, right? So it's just a method of signing, which is available in almost all EVM wallets. So you will be signing a payload which says who you want to delegate to, a nonce, right? So you can't relay this delegation signature multiple times, and an expiration. So, right, in case they don't relay it within whatever a day, it becomes invalid. So you'll sign this payload, and then this will be stored in the dYdX.vote backend and then relayed sometime shortly afterwards, right? And then on the EVM, it will validate that you signed the signature, right? It doesn't matter who's relaying it. And then it will actually apply that function, the delegation function, on the chain, right? And the same type of thing happens for voting. So you'll say, for proposal ID 9, I vote is true, right? And then you'll sign that payload, and then you'll hand it off to dYdX.vote, and then dYdX.vote will bundle that and send it to Ethereum, and then the dYdX governor will unpackage that, see that you actually signed it, and then apply your vote to the proposal. Was that clear enough?
Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. So there's this relayer, right? And that's what you've effectively built, and you currently help us run the relayer, eventually, potentially maybe a community member or somebody can help run this, right? And the relayer is also open sourced.
Yeah, so it's all open sourced. What we built is we built the front end over here. We built a backend API, which is pulling the data from the graph currently, which will probably be an issue in the coming months as the graph gets sunsetted, but for now it's working fine. So we're pulling proposals, we're pulling delegation data, and then we're exposing that to the front end. And then when you do actually vote, we right, apply all our validation, and then add your proposal to a database, which is then right probed by a relayer and then relayed to the chain. In the short future, hopefully the actual relaying method will be streamlined a little bit more. I guess I have two ideas for that. One would just be a little bit more expensive for the DAO, but I'm not sure, at least in current situation, how much that matters, where we could have the relayer actually go every single time. So right now there's a bit of a delay where we wait to batch and then relay. So it could be up to maybe sometimes like 12 to 24 hours before it's relayed. It's always relayed. If we get your vote for a proposal, it's always relayed before the end of the proposal. So right, you don't have an issue with that, but it could be a bit of a delay, so you won't see it right away. So we would consider just automatically, right, when you send your proposal, like your interaction, we could just relay it immediately, which would get rid of a lot of this relaying logic required, or all that would have to happen is someone just keeps loading up a wallet with ETH as, right, it would run out. Or we could have it just run by some community member, which would have a script running on their computer for it to be batched also still.
And so given that you're batching these votes, I guess two questions there. What happens if somebody uses dYdX.vote, submits their vote, it doesn't go on chain, right? Because it's going to get batched into a later time, potentially like 10 hours later or something. And then it's like, oh, I'm too impatient, like I don't want to wait, I'm just going to go ahead and vote myself actually. How does that work? What happens to the transaction that's been like done through dYdX.vote?
Yeah, so that's actually something that happens very, very often. In the early days of comp.vote, I would get quite annoyed because I didn't have, I would validate it at the time of them signing it, right? And then I would relay it, but it would get reverted. So I'd have to take that one out and re-relay. So that's what generally happens. If you vote already and then you try to vote again, right? Vote again by SIG or vote again on chain. There's no real difference as far as the governor is concerned. Your transaction just will be reverted. So nowadays the batcher just resimulates everything right before sending the transaction. And if it would be reverted, it takes it out of the actual relaying batch.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I think the first time that I ever tried it, I did that. So, apologies.
Yeah, no worries. So it just wouldn't have relayed it from that's what we just simulate. And if it won't go through, it's, marked as already voted because that's what happened and it won't actually be sent to the chain.
Yeah. And so then the second question is when you're looking at it on chain, actually, maybe we can pull one up as an example, like from the latest proposal. Are all the votes like within one transaction? Or are they displayed as separate transactions on chain?
I think there were 3 relays for the most latest one, and they were all from my, there were 3 right over here. They're all from my Ethereum account, so Arr00.eth, and you can see 3 aggregate calls, and those are all dYdX.vote relays. So you'll have some which have like 9 votes in it. So the most recent one had 9 votes in it. But usually there'll be a few per proposal, at least in the current setup.
Okay, yeah, so I see it. So it's all just like stored in the logs of this one transaction. And that's how it's
I could send it on chain. I don't know which channel.
I have it. I'll put it in the grants channel. I've been dropping stuff in the grants channel for anybody listening that wants to keep up with what we're talking about here. So yeah, awesome. I think that's all the questions I had, James, by the way. It was just my head.
I have a question, Arrow. And first off, thank you for building this for the dYdX ecosystem. I'm really excited to see like the activity that is going to go on dYdX.vote for future proposals. So just curious to understand, like, obviously you've built out the uni.vote page as well as the com.vote page as well. So how has the other ecosystems actually used these pages? Like, has the engagement been good with all of their proposals as compared to like voting directly on chain?
So comp.vote is pretty core to the ecosystem. Uni.vote, I'd say, is more of an afterthought. I think a much lower percentage of people voting within the Uniswap ecosystem are using Uni.vote. I just think that there's limited knowledge of the tool within their community. Comp.vote was actually integrated into a Compound extension on the Compound website today. So it, has pretty good placement there.
Nice.
And there's generally, I'd say, a significant constituency within the Compound community that uses comp.vote like most of the time. So you'll have people who come back again and again. But it's still not like a significant, like not over 20% of the votes are usually through comp.vote, probably maybe 10% sometimes.
Yeah. And for Uniswap in particular, right? Because I think cross-chain governance is something that is top of mind for their ecosystem. Is that something that you're intending to support? Like maybe voting on Arbitrum, voting on Optimism, as well as voting on main chain and then consolidating all of those together?
I'd like to do that. I haven't really been in contact with the Uniswap grants committee for quite a while. So as of now, there are no plans, but if they reach out to me with interest in that, then sure, I'd go ahead and do that.
And last question from my side. Any interest in exploring something similar for Cosmos?
Sure. I am not fully up to date with the dYdX happenings. I've obviously heard of dYdX v3, which is going to be, is it v3 or 4? I forget.
Yeah, v4.
Yeah, v4 is going to be on Cosmos, yeah.
Yes, v4. I didn't hear about the governance being migrated to the other chain. I guess it makes sense. Are there going to be votes taking place on Cosmos, or will the votes be relayed from Ethereum?
Yeah, so for a start, and James or anyone from the dYdX team, feel free to jump in here. I'd say like before v4 on mainnet is actually launched, governance is still going to stay on Ethereum. And even when v4 is launched for a while, governance is still going to take a while before it goes live as well. So I'd say probably we'll run in v3 first, and then once a consensus is reached, then the implementation will happen on the Cosmos chain, and then gradually we'll migrate the voting all over to Cosmos as well.
Okay. So I guess in the long term, it seems like, it might be useful, but yeah, I'd be happy to look into it. I haven't done so yet, though.
Nice.
I will say, as much as I want Arr00 to contribute more to governance as it migrates to v4, gas is not as big of an issue on Cosmos-based blockchain, so it might not be as big of a use case there, but definitely it could be interesting to look at other relays or aggregations. There's probably other use cases that we could think of, but it does feel like it was a bigger issue on the ETH network than beyond on like a Cosmos app chain, right? But to be fair, we still don't know what dYdX chain will look like. Right? Who knows right now?
Yeah, that is definitely something I was thinking about. I never had an issue with gas on Cosmos things.
Cool. A few more questions, Arr00, from us. So have you got kind of any data on sort of how many people have, I'm sorry if I missed this, but how many people have voted or delegated by signature, and how many kind of page views the site has got?
Yeah, so I actually looked into this as you guys sent me some questions about that. So it seems like we've had 250 unique visitors to the website and 914 page visits. And then there's been 38 transactions so far. And I think this is pretty good considering that there's been one proposal that we've been fully live from the time of the release, right? We only sent out the release announcement during the last proposal. So these are definitely pretty promising numbers for the .vote websites.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like you said about kind of the comp.vote is something that we'll probably do more of as well in future votes, is really start to push this and see how many people then can use it on future votes, which would be exciting. I guess
Yeah, of course.
a question for you as well is, what are your sort of future plans in the DAO space, governance space, the industry more broadly?
It's a tough question. I've been building some governance frameworks and on-chain governance frameworks with in partnership with one of the NFT companies out there. So NFT governance systems are a little bit lacking, it seems. So helping out over there a little bit. Right now, a very large portion of NFT projects are doing their governance on just Snapshot and then posting it to a multi-sig, which is problematic for legal reasons for a lot of these projects. So some of the projects want alternatives for actually casting votes on chain. And then, a couple little projects in the back, but see what, time tells.
Exciting. And I think probably just a last few, one to really kind of like put you on the spot, as I know you've been in and around the DAO space for a while, but what are some things that you notice that DAOs are doing well, that some lessons maybe dYdX can take from your experience? Like, yeah, what are some DAOs doing well? What can some DAOs improve on? Any lessons learned from your experience there?
Obviously, the grants programs are great, as we have this grants. Ask me anything right here. So I've always thought that, I think a lot of DAOs have an issue where really it comes down to legal problems with the main team being involved. So having a strong program which encourages third-party contributors is very important, such as the grants program, and making it stated that other people can have a very strong impact on the future of the protocol, as is very clear with many protocols. Compound DAO has minimal activity nowadays because not so many people have really seen that they can have an impact and they can get paid. So as long as you ensure those two things are very flagrantly, very well known, I think you have a good chance of success within your communities.
Appreciate it. Thanks. I guess we can open up the floor to any questions. As Cliff and Carl, do you have anything else you want to ask before we open up the floor?
I'm happy to open up, and if nobody wants to ask anything, I can try to throw some others.
Yeah,
I'd love to have others.
I have one question. We talked a little bit about kind of the benefits of being able to vote for free. I'm curious if there are any drawbacks, especially as it comes or relates to just centralization, or are there any embedded kind of trusts in using you as an alternative to paying gas fees?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest things, right? It's completely centralized, doing it in this manner. I'm sure there could be ways to lift the centralization, but as of now, it's stored on normal servers. If the servers that I'm using happen to go down, then the votes are lost. If there are possible things that could occur such that votes are not relayed. So there's definitely a centralization risk over here, which relaying faster, getting it away from me as quickly as possible is the best solution. So that's something I'm hoping to go for. I always have them, all the actual signatures are always public. So I can post this. There's an API endpoint, which is dYdX.vote/pending, I think, or is it API/pending? I think it's pending. And then that will provide you with all the actual signatures which are pending. So theoretically, anyone could build a relayer. That's not fully dependent on me. There's nothing that I'm holding back. So here, that's the endpoint I just sent. But yeah, it's definitely more centralized, and that is the only drawback from my point of view.
Nice. Appreciate the transparency.
Cool. Anyone else?
So it's really a censorship issue, right? Like could you in theory censor a bunch of votes?
Theoretically, yes. I guess I obviously have never censored votes, but
Yeah.
right, they're in this database, so
Yeah.
I could go in there and
Exactly.
theoretically delete them, and if no one saw them prior, then they would just not get relayed. But of course, the person who signed them could go straight to the chain, and I can't do anything about that.
Yeah, exactly. So again, like just having technically more than one relay, or like opening up to a community and having it being more of a community thing is probably a longer term solution here, right? But obviously, given the migration to V4, maybe we don't all need to worry as much about it. But yeah, it's interesting to think about. It's
Yeah.
Cool. Anyone else want to ask anything in the audience while we're waiting? Arr00, kind of how can people find out more about you? Where are you most active?
I guess on the various Discord channels, Discord servers, sometimes on the Compound Discord server, or on Twitter. Arr00 on Twitter, because Arr00 was taken by someone who hasn't used Twitter in 10 years.
Typical. Cool. Nice. All right. Well, if there isn't any questions, we'll close it up.
Can I just ask, what's Arr00? Where does Arr00 come from? Do you have an origin name, like an origin story?
Not an origin story. That's a story that I can tell. Really. Not much. No, not really.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I'm sorry for the letdown.
Yeah.
We don't know. Yeah. All good.
Cool. All right, bro. We'll close this down. Thanks for coming on, Arr00. Thanks for everyone for tuning in and asking the questions as well. What we'll do, I'll publish this on YouTube hopefully by the end of the day. Share it around so everyone can re-listen. And yeah, hope to see you around in the ecosystem, Arr00 still. And by all means, if anyone's got any questions or wants to ask anything here, then post in Discord and we can either reach out to Arr00 or tag him yourself on Discord. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much for having me.
Pleasure was ours. Thanks, Arr00.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you, James.
Bye-bye.